Hello, Dan. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Dan Norman, Jagadish, who I see all the time, always brings a smile to my face. But I don't know where you are, Em. You did all the preparation for this,
So
so
I'm currently in southeastern Virginia with my parents for a month this summer to help them with the harvest because we got a big produce farm here.
Nice. Very
Hello.
wow.
nice.
Okay, participants, put in the chat pane if you're a city person or a farm person, city or farm. And Dan Norman, I know you really well, but I don't know if you're a city person or a farm person.
I am currently just on the outskirts of Tampa. I'm in a small coastal town called Apollo Beach, so I'd call it a city person. But I love
But
the
it
mountains, but so more of a mountains guy, I would say.
Okay, so city, farm, or mountains. How about you, Jagadish?
I'm probably more of a city person. Grew up in cities all throughout, so yeah, I
All
would
right,
say.
attendees, put it in the chat pane. Find the chat pane on the Zoom. You all chatted in a Zoom sometime, whether you're a city person, a mountain person, or a farm person. Those are three important distinctions, and we'll direct the webinar based on people's responses. We're not going to do all the work. We want to make sure it's interactive. Come on, you know where the chat pane is. Let's go. City, farm, or mountain? Who can see messages? Do you see things coming through? You
I
guys not
see
going to
that it
answer?
looks like the chat might be disabled.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
I can see only the host and panelist thing. So maybe Nick, you can look into that, or I don't know.
All right. Well, that's something we should have found earlier. And there we go. Checking. Thank you. All right. So it's a good question that we'll have to table because we're going to start 2 minutes after the hour, right? One more minute, Em?
That's right. That's
Do I
right.
have that right? Because we
Another
hear
minute.
chop, 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 chop. I have another follow-up question. That wasn't even the prepared question. That was the question that popped into my brain because Em is a farm girl. And I
Right.
didn't know you were a farm girl,
That's
right?
right.
That's another thing that I'm discovering here. But we really want to talk about CPQ and accelerating people's
That's right.
growth, right? We're going to get to that in 1 minute. Oh, baby. And Jagadish, you in San Francisco?
Close to San Francisco Bay Area, South Bay. So yeah, actually, yeah, closer to the farmland and orchards. But although I never grew up in one, so I'm
Awesome.
learning. I'm learning.
Amazing. Cool.
Right.
All right. So we got
Well,
representatives from city, farm, and mountain. Let's have some fun. All
let's
right, Em,
have
it's all
some
yours.
fun. It's mine. I'm taking it away. We're here to talk about smarter scaling, right? Not just adding tools to the mix, but aligning systems to support how your team actually sells. And of course, this will be conversational, insight driven. We'll have Q&A. Hopefully we get the chat back up soon. And this webinar is brought to you by HubSpot, who I think you all know, the CRM platform on the market, Aptitude 8, an elite solutions partner in their ecosystem, actually #2 global partner 2024, and then Mobileforce, a leading CPQ tool on the market. And we are all partners with one another, which makes this nice and fun, which is why we're all cozy at the top of this call. I'm Em Wingrove. I'm the Chief Experience Officer for Aptitude 8, and obviously we've got a very star-studded group today, who of course I'll let introduce themselves, starting with the man, the myth, the legend, Dan Tyre. Please, sir, would you introduce yourself?
Wow. That's pretty good preamble there. I like that. My name is Dan Tyre. I'm CEO and founder of Tyre Angel, a 17-year HubSpot a run, starting with employee number 6, and on the board of directors of Aptitude 8, on the board of advisors for Mobileforce, and super excited to help you understand CPQ in the future. All right, who's next?
Daniel Norman, if you would.
All right, thanks, Em. So my name is Daniel Norman. I'm a senior manager of solutions engineering here at HubSpot. So essentially, my team and I spend our days working with growing businesses to help design the right systems and processes on the HubSpot platform to hit their goals. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about scaling with each of you.
And Jagadish, if you would.
Right. Yes, indeed. Yeah, this is hi everyone. Jagadish Bandhole, founder, CEO of Mobileforce. We are HubSpot partner in the CPQ space. We are focused on upmarket and enterprise. So anytime there are complex use cases, starting from middle of the funnel, all the way from quoting, contracting, delivering service, that's really our focus. We work pretty closely with Dan Norman's team here and Aptitude 8 teams to kind of put together the total solution for our larger and bigger and strategic customers.
All right, let's get into it. What a cast we have. All right, we're going to be covering everything from, oh, excuse me, guys, I got my screens a little tossed up here. Everything from why is scaling so hard? Why is it so challenging? To how to actually scale. We'll cover some real world use cases in action, and then we'll look at how HubSpot, Mobileforce, and Aptitude 8 can really be a force multiplier. So let's get into it. All right, I kind of want to set the stage here, outline sort of the problem, right? Like, why is this so hard? I've worked for quite a few early stage companies, some startups that have gone through these phases of growth. And I will tell you this, the same strategies and tactics that put you where you are today are absolutely not the same strategies and tactics that will get you where you need to go tomorrow, right? That will enable you to get to and scale to that next phase of growth. Something has to change, and in a big way, right? Like people, process, tools. To properly scale, it does require evolutions for how you think about and how you work with your people, your SOPs, your tech stacks, right? And even in now that I'm looking at the bullets, how I put this, didn't put the customers first, right? Oops, my bad. But hey, it happens, right? When you're trying to focus on your internal operations and how we're actually going to scale, it's common for customers to be an afterthought. It's not great, but if that's the case, your customers will feel it, right? And so will your systems. What worked for 50 users or 100 customers probably isn't going to work. Once you scale up, double those numbers, you're probably going to get new features in the tools, or need new features in the tools that you're using. You may need net new tools entirely, which might also mean that you need to set up some integrations to get the data in the right places. You certainly should be pulling in and incorporating automation. If you're smart, you're also incorporating AI. It's a tough problem to solve, right? Because it's touching so many areas of the business. So let's talk about how we can actually scale. As we think about how companies' approaches to growth, obviously the old playbooks aren't working, right? And there's more pressure than ever. I'm sure people on this call feel the pressure to scale your revenue, but also do it in a lean way, right? With leaner teams, tighter systems. I don't know anyone that's seen more of this than Dan Tyre. Dan, you've worked with hundreds of GTM leaders for decades. What are you seeing that's changing in the way that they're actually scaling?
No, you got it right, Em. There's lots of changes in the modern economy. For any company to scale successfully, you have to have high customer satisfaction across the board. And driven by these technological advances, AI over the last few years and then quarters and then months, customer expectations are at all-time high, right? Customers just expect that you know exactly what they want and you can deliver it very quickly. So every vendor has to face this high bar, delivering information quickly and with high accuracy, or you're toast. And customers need quick access to configuration, pricing, support information in minutes and hours, right? It's almost insane. So the tech stack either becomes a competitive advantage to service your customers, or it's a potential liability because you're not meeting the high customer expectations that are now in place. If you have that information, you can concentrate on the value add. And if you don't have the information, it's hard to produce. And you can say as much as you want about high customer satisfaction, but it just won't work. You have to be able to adjust to the fast pace and changes of the modern environment.
Jagadish, Daniel, you guys seeing anything?
Yeah, well, I think with respect to, I mean, we'll dig into this a little bit more, but absolutely, customer expectations going up is a key thing. But that also means, what does that mean in terms of your tech stack, right? I mean, you got to make sure your tech stack is aligned to actually meet those customer expectations. I think one thing we are seeing quite a bit is just a need for speed in general. I think everything, people want to get things out of the door quickly, whether it is quoting, contracting, or delivering the eventual service, right? Because that's what speeds up quote to cash, right? You can collect cash faster. So it's sort of all related, which means your tech stack and tool sets have to be aligned and fine-tuned to sort of operationalize that goal. That's kind of generally what we are seeing. And we can dig into that a little bit more, what it means.
Yeah, this idea of stack chaos is something that my team and I see every single day. Companies come to us because they've bought a collection of these best-in-class tools, but their growth has kind of hit that ceiling. And what we find is that these tools are often disconnected. Your sales rep kind of ends up being that integration point, manually copying and pasting information from their CRM into a spreadsheet or into an email, into an e-sign tool. So every manual step is a point of friction for them. It's slow, to Jagadish's point. It introduces errors, and it's what leads reps to spending more time on the admin stuff than actually on selling. So while you may have more tools at your fingertips, the processes actually get weaker, and then the revenue suffers in the long run.
Yeah. So it's not just about adding things, right? It's doing it in a smart way. So if scaling your growth is what's hard, right? And we talked about what that means, but what does it look like when it's not working? We've got some data here on the slide. Let's speak to some of these stats.
Yeah, I can jump in here. I think the pain is very real, and we see it in the data every single day. The first statistic on that slide is super telling. 1 in 3 sales reps spend more time on admin work than they do actually on selling, which is something we hear across the board from our sales leaders. And I think that leads directly to the next problem, which is 43% of the CRM ends up going unused. Why is that? It's because our reps are buried in the manual data entry point. We often hear from the reps that the CRM is more of a chore. It's all admin. It's not an ally there for them. And they don't have the time or the energy to explore the other features in the CRM that could actually help them. But what's exciting is I think we're at a bit of a turning point or an inflection point there. We're seeing a massive resurgence in CRM engagement, and AI being that key driver. That stat there showing 87% increase in the CRM use when AI is integrated, that's incredibly telling. It shows that when the platform starts working together for the rep, automating some of that busy work type stuff, that admin stuff that no one likes to do, myself included, that surfacing insights, making their lives easier, that adoption starts to skyrocket for them. And that's exactly why our core focus at HubSpot is building on that platform around rep-centric automation and workflows. So we want to eliminate that friction points for them, let them focus on what they're hired to do, which is sell and close business.
Amazing. One of the things that I see when we're working with dozens of mid-sized and enterprise companies is they have to adopt to that mindset of constant innovation, which is really hard. In the old days, right, 2023, if you did the same thing pretty much each season, it was no big deal. In the modern economy, you can't be stagnant. And RevOps is that strategy, not a support function. Systems have to reflect how customers actually buy, and they make the changes. It's bigger, it's harder, it's faster, higher customer expectations. It all rolls into making your job a little bit harder.
Couple of things I can add there, is I think one of the things we see is sort of middle of the funnel to the end of the funnel repercussions there, primarily given the amount of time people spend in doing manual configuration, pricing, and coding, especially in complex scenarios. Having a systematic way of doing things that where sales reps in general can create a complete proposal, fully configured, that's accurate, that's compliant, and that's fulfillable is key, because a lot of time is wasted because people end up inadvertently misconfiguring something just because they don't know. It's either tribal knowledge or it was a very manual effort and something gets missed. And so either the deal desk has to fix things later or it comes back all the way potentially. I mean, the worst is if it gets approved and then you kind of have to backtrack. That's even worse because it has an impact on customer satisfaction. So number of issues like that we've seen that sort of slows down that process to sort of fulfillment. So trying to catch that early on is the solution, but you got to have the systems that can catch it early on, right? You can't just do it manually. And so one of the things we've seen is leaders, both from a CRO perspective as well as even from a finance perspective, start to stress on making sure that the right kind of guardrails are there in around the time when you start to qualify a deal and start towards the end of the sales cycle, so that reps can create accurate proposals despite the complexity they might have, right? And also enabling newer people in the organization, because there's a lot of changes in sales organizations. There's a lot of turnover, new people come all the time. And so it shouldn't take a long time and a lot of training for people to get productive. Can systems be intelligent enough to help a rep be productive on day one, to be able to, without all the tribal knowledge, right? So are the guardrails there so that it can enable them to be able to put together an accurate, compliant proposal on day one? So that goes a long way overall in kind of speeding things.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the point both Dan, Norman, and Jagadish, you both made on the manual admin side work. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this. I know in a past organization, I had a disgruntled sales rep, rightfully so, actually went through and timed all the clicks, all the extra steps. And that was actually a tipping point for us as an organization to implement a new tool and processes, of course. So thank you guys for your input there.
No, it's horrible. I bet you half the people on this webinar right now, there's one person in the company that is the bottleneck, and he knows or she knows she's the bottleneck, and everybody knows they're a bottleneck. Every day they wake up, they're like, there's a bottleneck, and systems can help that. And if you unleash that bottleneck, a huge competitive advantage. Now your salespeople can sell. Now your account managers can make the change that you need in different regions and different parts of the price book and the company. That is a huge strategic. It's not even strategic. It's tactical. It helps employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, deliver in the new economy. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's how not to do it, right? That's the pain that we're feeling. That's what's broken. But let's define what good looks like. What does it actually mean to scale smarter today, and how are the best teams doing it?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think it means your sales reps can live inside of HubSpot for their entire workflow. It really becomes their command center at that point, not just another tool that they have to update. So let's think about a typical sales motion. A lead fills out a form, it's automatically assigned to the right rep, enrolled in a sales sequence, the deal progresses, and then the rep needs to generate a quote. Well, instead of switching to a spreadsheet or another program, they do it right there within the HubSpot deal record. An approval is triggered automatically for a discount, the document's generated, and it's sent for e-signature. That entire flow from lead set sequence to quote to close happens in one connected system. A lot of that native automation is within HubSpot. It's designed specifically to eliminate that friction that we've been talking about this whole piece. But let's be realistic here. When you have complex products or bundled services, sophisticated pricing rules, that's where the standard CRM quote tends to start falling a little bit short. And this is the perfect moment to layer in a more powerful integrated CPQ. You need a system that can handle that level of complexity without forcing the rep to leave the system or leave HubSpot. And that's where I think the seamless partnership with Mobileforce comes in, and they can all work in one command center, if you will.
Yeah, that's, I think, a great point there. I think there's obviously a lot of work that's done in the industry. And of course, HubSpot customers here, I'm sure you looked at a lot of the top of the funnel optimization, all the way capturing leads, top of the funnel, qualifying it, lead scoring it, predictive analytics. So much of that work has gone into it. What we see over and over again is as those things come through the top of the funnel to the middle of the funnel, and as it goes towards the end of the funnel, there still a lot of work to be done. Most teams are not well optimized there yet. So hence the focus there, as Dan talked about, especially in upmarket scenarios and complex selling where you have solution selling. You might be not just selling products, but you may be selling services as well. Makes it even more complicated. And that's where you got to get that middle of the funnel to the end of the funnel optimized. If you do that, it'll help you scale better. It'll help you grow at a faster pace and get more throughput.
Yeah, just think if your salesperson could be in HubSpot talking to the customer on the last day of the month. Today's July 31st, the last day of the month, and the customer says, "I want to take that line item off of the project that we're going to start on August 15th." And he can go into HubSpot, he can look at it, and he can say, "Done in 5 minutes," and get the sign off on that. Does that make your employee happy? Yes. Does that make your prospect happy? Yes. Does that make your account team happy? Yes. Oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about. That ability to give your sales people the ability to service their customer is everything in the modern age. If you have that, right, you have a clear advantage.
at a high level here too, something that we see with our most successful customers that are scaling is the concept of a fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, right? It feels good to do the same things over and over again because it's comfortable. You got those neural pathways, you're following the same pattern, but our customers, the ones that are the most successful, they break out of that fixed mindset and they have the growth mindset. They're flexible thinking. They recognize that things are going to have to change and evolve. And that kind of is the foundation, right? Like if you're in the fixed mindset, none of the scale is really possible. All right. So we've done a lot of talking. Let's ground this conversation in the real world. I think every single person on this call, on the panel, is like, we work with GTM teams facing these challenges every single day. So how does this all show up in an actual sales motion? So let's dig in. Complex configurations and pricing. So we talked earlier about the impact to the customer experience when scaling, right? Imagine you got a customer and they want to buy, you got a new SKU and they want to buy that new SKU and they want to buy another SKU. They want to buy 3 SKUs, right? And they're looking at you and saying, hey, can you give us a discount if we're buying more things? And you're like, yeah, I'd love to give you a discount, but I actually can't because my systems can't support that, right? That's a terrible customer experience. And I can't imagine also for like your finance team, if you were to say, oh, we can give the discount back to you in the form of like some sort of a credit or refund, right? Like it complicates everything. Jagadish, can you expand more on some of the complex requirements that you guys are seeing with some of your customers and how you actually meet those requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to a couple of things that we've seen in dozens of enterprise CPQ scenarios that we've implemented here in the past few months, working closely with HubSpot team and Aptitude 8. If you look at, and they kind of fall in, each one is different, each one is unique. That's what makes it very complicated, right? No, it's all B2B, but no two B2B scenarios are similar. Everybody has a customized sales workflow. Everybody has their own product catalog. Everybody has their own set of rules and constraints and things like that, that their sales teams are probably used to for years and years and years. So what the number one thing that we have learned from all of that, it's pretty important from an adoption perspective and acceptance perspective to put in a solution that molds itself to the sales workflow, not the other way around. Don't put in a tech stack that will force the sales rep to learn something totally new in terms of a workflow. That's just disaster. Okay, so I think one thing that we've learned over and over again is try to do a lot of discovery and understand exactly how the sales workflow works today, even if they're completely Microsoft Excel spreadsheets based, right? Even if it's totally manual, there is a cadence, that there's a set of things, inputs and things that are automatically calculated that sales reps are used to. It's just muscle memory, right? And so you're changing a tech stack, don't change that process. Take the best of what already works, but then solve for all the deficiencies, solve for the gaps, solve for all the mistakes, and solve for all the deficiencies. That's number one that we've learned, which means you got to have a system, both from an experience perspective as well as in the backend perspective, is very, very configurable and very flexible, because you got to be able to mold it to whatever the sales reps expect. And that means a close partnerships with RevOps and sales ops teams. You cannot simply sort of say, I'll go away and I'll do something, and as a vendor, we are not know-it-all. We can build an enabling platform, but we cannot give you a total solution in a vacuum. So that requires a partnership with RevOps and sales ops teams. That's number one that we've learned. And what does that mean? That means the sales ops teams or the RevOps teams are the ones that are closest to their sellers. They understand what the rules should look like, what their business constraints are, what the workflow is, what is the step 1, 2, step 3 that they follow, right, that they're used to. So use the platform. So they're the conduit. Give them the platform that enables them to craft that experience for their salespeople very, very quickly. And that's where this concept of no code, low code comes in. We've built everything that we've built, but we've built it with no code, which means it doesn't require a dozen programmers to go out and program all this stuff, and which means it doesn't take months and months in order to operationalize it. You could go from idea to operationalization in matter of hours, potentially, right? So now the sales operations teams should be able to use the platform and to configure things like product rules, pricing rules. They've got a particular set of discount rules. It might be multiple sets of discounts, like escalated discounts, or I may need my finance team to approve, my sales team to approve, my factory shop team to approve in manufacturing kind of use cases. all of those requires a very robust discount system. Now, somebody needs to be able to put together those rules. Now, those rules, who knows those rules the best? It's the sales ops and rev ops teams, not the vendor. So, which means you got to give them the tool set so that they could do this very quickly themselves, self-manage, self-correct, and self-create. And that's where a lot of this visual no-code product service builder goes a long, long way. That's one thing that we've learned. And that's something that has helped roll out these things very quickly. The other aspect of it is the runtime. Once you've built all of this, you let the system fly, but then there are a lot of things that happens in a contractual situation, which is runtime. Going back to Dan's earlier point about last day of the month, you want somebody to be able to, sales rep to be able to go change something. Okay, now the system at runtime in real time should be able to handle and adapt to that kind of an exception scenario, which means it needs to be able to very quickly go out and connect to whatever the other system is, whether it's CRM or whether it's an ERP, to go look up inventory or look up pricing changes or look up additional discount approvals that might be needed in order to basically make that revision to the quote and push that through very quickly. If that requires days or it requires a lot of bureaucratic workflows or manual workflows behind the scene, you're going to miss the deadline. You're not going to be able to close it in that quarter, right? It falls off to the next month. That's typically what happens. Deal that says we got too much volume, too many manual workflows, we can't do it, right? So they got to prioritize. Well,
No,
why prioritize?
it happened to me today. I got a call at 6 o'clock in the morning. We have the biggest deal in the pipeline that we have to move one line item. There's 47 line items and one line item hour to 6 cents an hour. How can we do that? And I'm like, how can we do that? Right? If you can do that, then you get the deal. Not only do you get the deal, the customer is ecstatic, right? The rep is ecstatic. Though everybody is celebrating. If you can't do that, it's pain. Does this resonate with our audience? Does everybody understand what we're talking about? Is this the world that you live in, or are we slightly missing? Put in the chat pane if we're nailing like what we're trying to figure out. And Joe, you put in a good question. We'll get to that question soon in regard to the changes or difference in deal up.
And then one last thing I want to point out on this slide is once you talked about the build time and sort of the runtime, the other important aspect, very, very important, is ability to deal with quoting multiple kinds of things on single proposals, because for a lot of times we've heard people cannot do all of it in one proposal, so they have to try to do this piecemeal and get multiple PDFs and multiple Word documents out, and that complicates the whole process. Even if you DocuSign it, it still gets complicated because you're doing all of that stuff in manually. So the ability to do things like selling hardware, selling subscription-based software, right? Usage or seat or tiered pricing, block pricing, volume pricing, multiple different kinds of schemes, selling services like professional services, all of that in a single entity, in a single proposal, gives you the 360-degree view. You know what the total deal looks like, you know the components that it looks like, and everything can be looked at. Approver is happy because somebody who is approving is able to look at the whole thing and they can approve it. Finance is happy because they know what the order looks like in totality. And the icing on the cake is if the system can take that and automatically generate a proposal, a PDF proposal or a DocuSign envelope to get that out. So you don't have to do that manually. So I think those are sort of the three things that we see from a complexity perspective. You know, complexity is not always in products. You might have only a handful of products or bundles, but the complexity comes in both the process and sort of the real-time changes as well.
Something else I want to touch on is that great reps and great account teams, they know what the customer wants, right? They strive to serve the customer. And if the tooling of their organization cannot give the customer what they need, reps will leave. I mean, we've experienced it, right? Like we've been there. I've been through multiple early stage companies trying to grow and scale. Great reps, they will sayonara, they will leave. And I'm not trying to like fear monger, but it's a reality that I've seen.
Exactly.
All right, let's move into another use case here, distributed field sales. So what about all the businesses that have folks working out in the field, right? Not only are they facing challenges with having to figure out how to do their work offline or access data that they can't access, there's also the fact that if there's any services component, payment can't be collected until the service is rendered, right? So that draws out the whole process, not just the sales and the collection process, but the whole CPQ functionality of whatever the tool is that's supporting it, right? How can field sales motions be scaled?
Yeah, I can start with a couple of points here, and then Dan can add from a CRM perspective. The one of the things that we hear again and again, especially in industries where there are a lot of people up and about in the roads, right? So field sales kind of scenarios such as distribution, manufacturing, business services, telecom services, where today people are up and about, they're meeting customers, and they want to be able to transact at the speed of time, right? So they want to be able to do anywhere anytime business. And what does that mean? That means mobility, right? And we all know mobile devices are very capable today, right? People have iPhones and iPads and fancy smartphones, whether it's iOS or Android or whatnot. But the thing is that the tool set need to take advantage of those device capabilities to provide the ability to transact, the ability to kind of price or quote or whatnot. But one thing to keep in mind in those scenarios, it's not the same thing as doing it in the comfort of your office in front of a desktop, right? Usually, it also means it's a high pressure scenario, which means you are usually scrambling, you're out of your comfort zone. Yes, you have your device, but you may not have good connectivity, or you may be right in front of a customer, so you can't keep them waiting for too long. You may be in a situation where you're trying to get access to pricing or some other data very, very quickly. So this is where, and you may not be able to type a lot of these things, right? Because it's hard to type in these devices. So those are the considerations that go in from a design perspective. And one of the things we've seen is enabling them with a tech stack that is really kind of geared and optimized for that mobile native experience, where it is able to offline cache some of the data that they typically need that's relevant to them ahead of time intelligently, right? Which means access to their CRM data, access to their quote data, product catalog data, so that they can actually create, even if not an entire quote, at least a draft quote, so that they can kind of pull that up in front of a customer in a very consultative selling kind of a scenario, right? That's number one. The second is, how do you take advantage of the fact that you've got voice and AI capabilities that are available? Why make people type a lot of things, right? Can they speak to it? Can they say, hey, quote me this standard study or standard bundle or something like that? And the system is able to take that and translate it into a sequence of steps, completely avoiding all those keystrokes and then giving them something very quickly. And then the third and most important aspect is anything that requires online, such as maybe you need to send it out for an approval, or maybe you need to go and connect it to CRM or ERP to gather stock data or inventory data or something like that. That does require connectivity. How does the system intelligently connect back and sync back online when the connectivity becomes available? So in an online, offline kind of a mode, we live in the world of 5G, but believe it or not, people still struggle with connectivity because they go out into warehouses, they go out into fields and remote areas, and they don't. And we get those requests all the time. And the ability to have that capability, which can work online, offline, goes a long way. But Daniel, up to you on what you see from a CRM perspective.
Right on. I'd have to ask Em first, though, since we were talking about farming earlier. Is 5G even available on the farm? Can we get quotes out there?
Sorry, you're breaking up. I can't. Just kidding.
Right on. Yeah. No, bringing it back to the platform and field reps, they live off their devices, right? And when you are working off your devices and getting back online there, if you maybe are in a spotty spot, your forecast is being updated in HubSpot immediately. That gives visibility back to sales leadership to make informed decisions there as well too. And we talk about the workflows and automation. This can trigger the next steps in the customer journey as well too, with some of that automation. When you've got those workflows set up to set up those triggers to maybe send them, it could be anything from an approval letter to some type of documentation after they've signed something. So it all feeds back into the platform, into that one system, that one command center that they're working out of.
And for anybody that's in B2B, by the way, don't forget we're all consumers too, right? And so I think Dan Tyre, you were the one talking about customer expectations are through the roof. We expect what we see in our consumer world, right? And so if a business can't provide to me the same experience, B2B business can't provide to me, part of a buying group of another business can't provide the consumer experience that I get in the rest of my everyday world, then I feel like my expectations haven't been met. So I love to see that we're really rising to the occasion here with the tooling.
Amazing. And that's right. And if you can do it, you're a wizard. And if you could say done, and they're like, what? You're like, done. I made that change. You're like, excuse me? You're like, sign right here. We're done. First of all, rep loves it. Second of all, you love it because you're delighting the customer. Third of all, the customer's like, really? That's not the way it usually goes with other vendors. And so you're setting yourself apart, right, with delivering the last mile.
One quick thing to end, just to kind of give a data point here. We talk about scaling in the context of this. We have one large distribution customer with about 1,200 field sales reps, and they've been a 3-year customer, implementing it in production, integrated with CRM, integrated with ERP, all of that kind of stuff, and they use offline and some of our AI capabilities and all of that stuff. I can tell you their real data point here. They went from doing about 800 to 1,000 quotes a day, a single day, to today about 3,500 quotes a day. It's a significant volume and a significant increase, all because of the right kind of tooling and automation that's available, right? So it's a data point. I just want to kind of share that we are proud of. And so, yeah, it's not about just making it convenient and easy, but it also goes hand in hand in scaling. If you're able to make it automated, you're able to make it easier, there's more throughput. Reps are going to quote more. They're going to push more orders. And that's just a natural outcome.
All right, let's talk renewal. So before I built Aptitude 8, a services business, I worked in SaaS for my whole career. And it's great, renewals, right? It's great for forecasting and predictability, but what we're seeing now is this like kind of perceived uncertainty in the market looming. And what I'm seeing all software companies doing is shifting a huge focus on customer retention and expansion. And obviously renewals really play into that. And at the point of renewal, you also now have an opportunity to expand, right? Jagadish, talk to me a little bit more about how we can solve for scaling renewals.
Yeah, and I think this is also related to one of the questions I think Joe asked on the chat here with respect to subscription. You're absolutely right, Joe, about complications that different kinds of subscriptions, they've gotten really fancier and fancier with all kinds of SaaS models that are out there. But I think fundamentally what we've focused on is, and we're trying to keep up, right? And our focus is around designing the solution around sort of 3 distinct kind of concepts, right? You've got a quote that should be capable of adding line items that are one-time, perpetual license, subscription license, services, so on and so forth. Within the context of subscription, it should also provide you at least 2 dimensions, if not more. So you obviously got the time dimension, but you should also have a dimension in terms of the unit of measure. Either it could be user-based or seat-based, or it could be usage-based, in which case it needs to integrate with something that actually measures usage. And that's where the real-time integration comes in. We are able to connect in real time to existing systems, metering systems, or anything that you might have homegrown, as long as they're API based, and include that in the quoting logic. Get that unit of measure from the third-party system that's there during the act of quoting, and use that as a way to inform the rep as to what the right usage level may be. But either way, get those 2 dimensions plugged in and have a pricing model that sort of functions off of that. So that's number 1. The second thing is we also take that subscription to a sort of 3 kinds of quote types that we support. One is what's called a new subscription. The second is called an amendment. And the third is called a renewal, right? So those are the 3 that we start. There could be other flavors that we could add. But the idea is you go through a new subscription, you go through the quote, have all the line items. And what the system does is it takes that quote and converts it into a contract. Sometimes it's also called an order, but in our system, we call it a contract. It's a distinct object, which is different from a quote. The quote gets closed, deal is won. It translates then to a contract and a set of contract line items. And then further, that takes that and generates an active subscription. And a subscription typically has a time segment allowed with it. A subscription have multiple segments, which are time segments, and multiple line items. And of course, only the line items from the quote that have a recurring aspect, subscription aspect, makes it to that. The rest of it sits in the contract, and that's basically it, right? Now you go back into your deal motion from the CRM perspective. Now, as the subscriptions are active, the system is able to, CPQ is able to then track on a daily basis which of these deals or which of these subscriptions are coming up on renewals. Now that can automatically trigger and create a renewal deal in HubSpot automatically as a draft deal, notify the rep that, hey, here's a customer that's coming up for renewal and this is a new opportunity that we've created. And they can then take that and start to drive that. Not only it does that, it can also take that subscription as a basis and then automatically create a renewal quote with those line items attached to that renewal deal. And the rep already basically has half the work done because they don't have to manually do all of that. They already have a renewal deal that they know they need to get done, right? Otherwise, the customer is going to churn, right? They got to get it signed. And now we've got the renewal quote ready to go. And maybe they go out and upsell it. Maybe they tweak it. They start from what they already have. And then they basically go and do the adjustments. And at that point, then the system can then sunset the old subscription and then recreate the new subscription, the renewal subscription, and maintain that link. That's the base functionality that we offer, right? But because just like everything else I mentioned, it's a very configurable, no code, low code thing. There are always bespoke elements that come in. There are businesses we always see where it's not a standard user or usage base. There is some other quirk that kind of comes in, or maybe there's some tiered pricing quirk that comes in, or some volume thing that comes in, or there is some rule where they said, oh, if they bought A, B, and C, now they get a rebate of some sort, right, or a discount of some sort. These are rules that we can add because it's a configurable platform. So just kind of wanted to kind of talk about that life cycle. That's kind of how we manage it. But Daniel, you can chime in kind of what you've seen.
Yeah, I think you explained it very well as far as the technical aspect and the platform aspect of it. But I think from a purely revenue and sales leadership standpoint, I always point back to the stat, and at minimum, it costs about 5x more to keep a customer than it is to get a new customer, right? And I've seen upwards of like 25x to get a new customer here. So why wouldn't you focus on your renewal base and automating that process and making that as seamless as possible on your sales reps to keep the current customers that you have? Like that's your base, that's your low-hanging fruit. Like, why go out there and spend more money? Yes, we're going to go out there and get new acquisition as well too, but you've got to keep good care of your base as well too.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to comment on is HubSpot has fantastic reporting and dashboarding capabilities. Now, you can only use it if you've got the right data. So that's the magic, right? So if you're able to get granular data back from both your deal properties that you manage and you're able to architect, but also the CPQ properties flowing back into it in terms of your existing ARRs, MRRs, line item level pricing, line item level discounting, unit pricing, and volumes that people have purchased, you could feed that back into the reporting beast, and you get better insights out of it and better actionable. It's more actionable, right? And so yeah, and I mean, you guys integrate all this stuff. You are the ones who actually put together this for the customers, and you can speak to that. But yeah.
Absolutely. It takes an expert. I'll speak on it in a couple of slides. I do see that there's a question in the chat, and I know Nick answered it, but I kind of want to hear from you, Jagadish. But Joe is asking, what's the benefit of using Mobileforce CPQ instead of HubSpot's sort of out of the box CPQ? Because there's
great question. Yeah, so I think it's just about what it's meant for. HubSpot building CPQ is great. It's a great tool where it's all in all when it's built for the simpler use cases where you have a handful of products, not a lot of rules. You've got a pretty standardized way of quoting and invoicing in terms of the columns and the things that you want to put in there. You want to do that, HubSpot CPQ out of the box will serve your needs very, very well. You should use it. That's what I would recommend, right? That's not what we focus on. What we focus on, we pick up the baton where HubSpot leaves that, right? As we go into scenarios that we talked about, use cases where we talked about, where the seller experience needs to be highly tailored, because what they want to see in the user interface, the seller, has more elements to it, such as more columns, things like volume-based pricing, tiered pricing, different schemes, block pricing, being able to risk up and risk down, being able to do stackable discount, being able to do discounts as well as uplifts, examples of those, right? Those are things that HubSpot CPQ doesn't handle, right? That's where you start to come into the Mobileforce land, right? You have things such as multiple levels of discount approvals, both parallel approvals, sequential approvals, or a combination of those. You need that. You want to be able to do a much more customized output generation, such as the proposal, where it's not just a single sheet. Let's say you have a complete proposal where you want to be able to generate almost an SOW or a multi-page proposal that has not only the code line items, but also information from your marketing documents, addendums, technical specifications that are conditionally attached, terms and conditions that are conditionally put in there. You need Mobileforce for that. There's a very, very robust document generation engine that goes along with that. Things like integration with other third-party backend systems, such as I mentioned, ERP. It's a great example. A lot of our manufacturing, wholesale, distribution type customers use that all the time. They love the fact that at the time of the quoting itself, which is at the source, it is able to catch as the rep adds, it can intelligently alert the rep that something that they're trying to quote is not available in stock. And that requires real-time information from a third-party system and including that in the quoting logic and to surface that. You have situations like that, you need Mobileforce, right? Those are some of the examples there's a lot more that's certainly available on our website. I welcome you to go look at it, and we could certainly talk to you about it offline as well. But as you go into the realm of product pricing complexity, process complexity, output document complexity, we do. And we are also just putting out a beta version of our agentic CPQ. We call it Ask CPQ, that can then further consolidate it, take you from 30, 40 clicks, which we routinely take it down to 7 or 8 clicks through a lot of the automation that we do already. And we could take it all the way down to a single click where you could just use natural language, comes up right by the side, and you could give it contextual commands where you don't have to go through even the 5 or 6 clicks that are required, and it can automatically do it for you, put together the quote for you. So that's something that we are announcing pretty soon. So those are all the kinds of things. If any of those things are things you're looking for, we'd love to talk to you.
All right. Let's bring it all together. I want to index on something, Dan Norman, you said about HubSpot being the command center, right? So if you've got HubSpot as the command center, your CRM platform, and hopefully that's inclusive of Sales Hub, Marketing Hub, Commerce, and even Content Hub, right? And you've got Mobileforce as your quoting engine, you're going to be off to a pretty nice start, but that's not it, right? There's a couple more pieces to the puzzle remaining. I wish it was as easy as throwing some money at a software, plugging it in, and letting some magic happen. I think we all wish it was that easy. But I'll go back to what I mentioned at the top of the webinar: people, process, and tools. And I know we were also talking earlier about you have to be systems first, but I'm intentionally putting it as people, process, and tools because scaling requires really thoughtful change management, right? We're dealing with humans here, people. Humans are complex beings. And there's a saying, I don't know where to attribute it, but people don't hate change. People hate being changed, right? So you have to consider that people are a very, very big part of scaling. And so I would also sort of mention that you got to have the right people. Another thing that I've heard in many of the companies I've worked for is that, hey, the people that got us to this phase aren't necessarily going to be people that got us to the next phase. So there may be some rejiggering of roles and org structure. You're certainly going to have to expand and hire new people. Obviously, they need to be the right people. And as complex as humans are, we are also kind of simple, right? We need processes. We need SOPs. We need to know what good looks like and what the process is supposed to follow, because you got to get them to adopt the processes, right? And you need a mechanism in place to track and measure adoption. So, with any software implementation or even an implementation of new processes, one of the most critical components and factors is business continuity too, right? No one can afford to put their whole business on hold while they sort out their growth and figure out their tooling, right? You can't put your business on hold. And then that gets into risk mitigation. You have to be thinking proactively about how to avoid as much risk as possible and then mitigate any risk that's, present. It really is an orchestration, truly. And I'm not saying all of this to scare anybody or freak anyone out. I seek to bring awareness to the reality, right? At Aptitude 8, we do complex implementations of HubSpot, of Mobileforce, we do integrations, we do it all day, and we do the change management component of it all day, right? So if you're gonna grow and scale and you're trying to get there and you can recognize that lift, which I hope we've been able to sort of educate and compel today, it's totally natural to feel scared, and maybe you should feel scared, right? We're talking about large scale changes that are impacting every part of your business, which is why you shouldn't go it alone. To sort of answer, Jagadish, you were kind of teeing me up earlier on the last slide. Talk about risk, right? Oh my goodness, you got people, processes, and tools, and you're just going to try to willy-nilly, sew it all together. Obviously, I'm going to highly recommend that you're going to partner with somebody an expert that's not going to let you fail, right? Go into your next phase of growth with confidence, right? Have an accredited partner on your side. That's smarter scaling, right? You're reducing the risk. You have experts. And look, it could be a capacity thing too. Like maybe you have some experts on your team, but you just don't have the time. That's another factor. How long is this implementation actually going to take? Because I don't know about you guys, but I've had board members stare me down the neck and say, why is this taking so long, right? Where's the ROI? And then you start to look bad. So the investment of the time and the cost up front, it might seem a little intimidating, but you are saving so much money in the long run by partnering with someone that can actually get you to the finish line in a confident way. And then you can actually go to your board and, of course, your customers and your team and say, hey, we did it. It works the way we expected. And with the growth mindset, you know that you can iterate and optimize as you go.
One data point I can add, is from, I was just looking at some of the notes that I got here from all the successful implementations we've done. If you look at the overall implementation, in almost all of those cases, they have explicitly allocated, the leaders from those teams have allocated 10 to 15% of the time on discovery and documentation of their existing process before they even started the implementation. And that's a key point, right? And this is where a lot of the AI teams talk about this all the time. And this is where to talk to an expert, understand and document what you do and what are the gaps, what are the things you're trying to solve for and objectives. Then typically what I've seen there is 40 to 50% of the time is maybe, I would probably say 50% of the time is actually focused on the actual implementation, right? The actual tech stack, putting it together, configuring it, implementing it, all that stuff, and taking it to UAT. Believe it or not, about 30% of the remaining time is actually 30 to 40% of the remaining time is focused on change management. People are focused on training and kind of running through things with like a power group of users first and then rolling it out in phases to the rest of the people. That's what I've seen in successful implementations. So if you are considering a change, do budget for that kind of, compartmentalization.
Absolutely. And I know I think I was asking you about requirements earlier. That's so important to have on the front end of an implementation. You need to know what you need, right? And down to the specifics of every, little team. So if you think you can lead an implementation and not hit up your teammates to see what they need, then, you're going about it wrong. You have to be able to detail out those requirements so that the build functions as expected and does hit all of those requirements, right?
I love that. And if people want that and want Aptitude 8 to do a quick consultation, you'll provide that, Em. Just drop your email in the chat pane, right? And Em will coordinate follow-up because we want to get into the details. We want to take all the great stuff that Dan said, that Jagadish said, the incredible experience that we have, and we'll know in the first 20 minutes whether the upgrade is worthwhile and whether we can save you time, effort, and money. All right, I'm going to stand down because we got to move to Q&A, right? We're down to 7 minutes. Come on, Em, let's go.
All right, let's go. Okay, the one that's in the Q&A thing right now is from Joe. Looking to migrate from Deal Hub CPQ and VersaPay payment processing to Commerce Hub CPQ and Stripe payment processing using NetSuite for our financial reporting. It's kind of a long question, but basically they're trying to get at, are there any plans in the development pipeline and the roadmap to update the native integration with NetSuite? Dan Norman, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think as we continue to develop Commerce Hub, that has been a point that we have discussed of strengthening some of those integrations, not only with NetSuite, but other ERPs and accounting packages on the back end. Like, I don't think HubSpot's ever going to take over for QuickBooks or Sage or any of the finance FinServ type of packages out there. But we want to have very elegant solutions to be able to move that data back and forth very cleanly and seamlessly. So yes, I do know that there is a focus on improving those integrations across the board.
One thing I'll call out there too, and I love to see that that the NetSuite integration exists with HubSpot right out of the box. Aptitude 8 does so many custom integrations with NetSuite. Whatever data you want in NetSuite to come over into HubSpot, I definitely wouldn't recommend all of the data, be wise there. But we do these all of the time. We've got very skilled developers and consultants and leaders on our team that can they knock these integrations out all the time. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely let us know. We also have a strategy practice at Aptitude 8. If you don't actually know for sure if something is going to be feasible, if you're like, I don't know if I need Mobileforce or something else, or what can HubSpot do? Where does one thing end and the next thing begin? We have a whole strategy practice. We've got a director of strategy, and we can talk you through feasibility. What should you do? Not just what is possible. So just putting that there as well.
And I will say that I will be at Inbound. We're going to have about 50 or so pre-sales solutions engineers there. We'll be able to take meetings with partners or prospects or customers. So if you've got some questions, come find us in HubSpot HQ right at the demo stations. We'll be there.
Awesome. Any other questions? That was the only one I saw in the QA thing. In the chat, I think we got them.
What's the next step, Em? If somebody believes that this is a problem for them, how do they go take the next step?
Well, first of all, you should get in touch with us, with all of us. And we made that easy for you by providing one link. It's the same link that the QR code goes to, where you can get in contact with all of us. It's got all of our contact information in there, and we'd love to hear from you. We're actually going to be doing a LinkedIn Live session with the Chief Growth Officer of Mobileforce to dive a little bit deeper. It'll be cool, casual. It's like a 15 to 20 minute ordeal, but certainly recommend taking a look at that. That'll be there on the QR code, all of our contact information, and we'd love to hear from you.
My experience is that this prospects really want to know the details, right? Is this going to work in my situation with my integrations, with my tech stack, with so my recommendation is they get to one of your experts sometime next week, right? And rather than generic, let's dig down to the 50 or 60 people who attended today, like prioritize those first. And it's worth 20 minutes of your time to send something in advance. This is what I'm doing. This is the 3 specific problems, just like Jagadish answered the question, the 15 reasons he had off the top of the head. This is improvement over Deal Hub. If you fall into one of these categories, and that should be in the follow-up email, if you fall into one of these categories, if you have significant pain around this, if you spend more than 2 seconds on not automating this, then we'll dig into those. We'll explain how we would set up that process, how A8 would evaluate it, the current process, the future process. Mobileforce, no code, quick code will get in there, and then boom, you're off to the races. Because the one thing we didn't talk about is like Q4 is big for a lot of our prospects and customers, right? We want to be laying the groundwork so that you have the benefit of this going into the busy season.
I think one thing I would like to just add there is, somebody had asked about how do I convince my leadership, right? Is this a right thing for me to do, or should I upgrade or whatnot? I mean, you should always start from the outcome, from your business objective. Do you want more operational flexibility to build and scale your business than what you currently have? Does your tool set currently provide you that? If the answer is yes, then stay with what you have. Absolutely. Right? Otherwise, don't wait. Let's talk. Second is, current tool set that you have, does it give you all the competitive differentiation? Does it make it more competitive? In a more competitive world, is there anything else you could do, either faster quoting or faster, more intelligence around leads or deals or better presentation, whatever it may be, right? Does that give you a competitive edge? If a tech stack is going to give you that competitive edge, you're going to scale faster. You're going to win more deals from your competitors. You're going to scale faster. So that's another reason. That's the reason you got to give. And then the third is your customer experience going to be better? The way you deal with the customers, the way you engage with prospective customers, and the way you transact with them, if the tech stack is going to help you improve that, you're going to win more business. So all of those three things is going to help you scale. So if the answer to any of those three things are yes, it's time to upgrade, and we should talk.
One other thing, if you're having problems convincing somebody in your organization, Dan, Norman, Em, Jagadish, they're all available. We have referenceable customers who've been through this path before and will pound the table, okay, and explain in no uncertain terms in executive language. This is why it's worthwhile making the investment in Q3. Boom! That was amazing. Incredible. All right, attendees, rate the webinar scale of 1 to 10. This wasn't in the briefing notes, so I'm a little off track here, but
Okay,
I
I'll
know
take
Going
sure.
rogue.
Exactly. I'm going rogue. Yeah, I thought it was great. You guys prepared, right? Hopefully we explained a little bit of the pain. We know that lots of people are struggling with this. We have the answer. It's sitting right in front of you. You guys decide when, in fact, you want to move or not. 1,000 out of 10. Oh my goodness.
We'll take
Okay. All right. I know, Dan, it's going to skew our stats, right? Going to be 250 out of 10, right? Amazing.
Take
Yes.
it.
Thank you very
Take
much,
it.
Jordan.
it.
Go ahead, Em. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, Dan T, thank you. Dan Norman, thank you. Jagadish, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that came today. Recognize it's the last day of the month. Thank you for joining us. Listen, let's stop patchworking stuff together, right? Let's choose systems that are going to scale with us. Let's choose partners that are going to scale with us and get us there. Thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.